Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Digital Mapmakers Academy. My name is Paul Postal, and today is part three in the final episode with Beg, Borrow, and Steal Productions. Last week, Jared and Becca showed us how to use elevation and water to add to your maps and make them look really beautiful. This week, Cheryl is going to show us how to use the pathing tool to recolor objects, and Jeremy is going to show us how to use light and shadows to really make your maps pop. This episode is an extra long episode, but I promise you that the juice is worth the squeeze. Let's get into it. All right, Cheryl, what are you doing for us? This is the part I'm really interested in because I'm interested in how you can use paths to do different things.
Okay, so yeah, the path tool, you can see my screen okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So the path tool was designed literally just to make a path on like a world map or something.
Okay.
It was is That's why it's called the path tool. There's been a lot of upgrades to it, so you can do free draw. You can't really see the red. You can do free draw where you can do like, you know, whatever you want,
Mm-hmm.
or you can do segments, which gives you the option to make something more um, perfect,
Mm-hmm.
perfectly sided, or if you want to like outline things. Um, I like to use the path tool to do a lot of various things because sometimes you have, for example, we'll zoom in here on these curtains.
Mm-hmm.
We have these lovely curtains. And while I like the curtains, they're not necessarily um, they're not necessarily the what I want to have for curtains. I think red's lovely, but maybe I want to make them blue or purple or pink or green. So the problem with the hues sometimes is that while you can change them, some parts don't always. So with the curtains, you can do that. That's no problem. I can make purple curtains,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not an issue. But if I want to make this bed a different color, if I go into the hue, the wood's changing color too.
Okay.
And I don't necessarily want blue wood.
Gotcha.
I
Yep.
just want the blankets to be blue. So you can go in and use the path tool. Now for something like this, I'll shrink it down a little bit so it's smaller because I don't want to have to like spend an hour and a half coloring. And I'll go to the path tool. I'll choose, it doesn't matter what color you choose at first. I like the darker colors. And the first thing you do is take off the blur because the blur is going to give it a funny edge.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Um, I will lower the opacity a little bit when I'm working, but for this, I'll just do this. So then I will increase the width because the smallest width is pretty thin, and it's going to take forever to color that bed with that width. We'll go back to free draw, full opacity, and I'm going to increase the width to 5, where it's going to be nice and thick. So I can basically color this as quickly as I want. It's not going to be as perfect as I normally do.
Mm-hmm.
I would spend a lot more time making sure it's perfect because that's how I do. But for this, just a general coloring will do. So now it's like, it just looks like a bright purple sheet on top of the bed.
Yep.
And that's not really that attractive. So then you can go into your blend modes and you can start playing with the blend modes to change it. The one that works the best is hue because now you have it takes up that color and it looks exactly the same kind of idea as the it's the same color as the sorry, same shading or value as what's underneath.
Yep.
Now, with that, instead of painting, flattening and painting it, which is what we used to do, we'd flatten the asset and use the brush to paint over it, or we'd use different blend modes of different things to make it look right. We can just change that bedding to whatever color we want now. And there's no so you can color match anything. You can make it teal, which is one of my favorites. Now I have this tiny itty bitty bed. Oh, I know what I just did there. I have this tiny little bed. I don't want it to be tiny, so I'm just going to group those back together. I'm going to go into the group and I'm going to have both selected,
Mm-hmm.
and then I can bring it back up to size. by looking at the counter up here at the top corner. So I can bring it back up to size and then put it back in place.
Oh my gosh, that is so brilliant. One of my frustrations with Dungeon Fog is exactly what you said, Cheryl, that you can change the hue and colors of things, of objects in Dungeon Fog, but the same
Mm-hmm.
thing happened. I'm trying to change the color of the sheets on the bed, and it's changing everything.
Yep.
So this is
Yep.
brilliant.
So, and then, I mean, if you want, you can pretty much do anything with this. If you go into this rug and you're like, "Oh, it's cute, but I'd really rather it be, a little more colorful." Now
Hmm.
that's kind of bright. It doesn't really fit perfectly, but if you just lower the opacity, it kind of blends in a bit better. You can also use the blur and have the opacity back up to full, and it kind of gives you a blurring effect,
Hmm.
so it's not sharp. So you can put your details into the map if you or any object if you want to. Um, the path tool can be used to like if you want to put a detail into these curtains here, like you don't want them to be perfectly red. You can just put in blue stripes into the curtains if you want blue
Wow.
stripes. So, and because of the hue mode, it just shows the color. With the path tool on hue mode, it doesn't matter if you crisscross, it blends perfectly. But if you're on a different blend mode, any of the other ones, um, you can see there's a crossover.
Yep, I can see that. Okay.
So the hue's the one that you're going to want to use. Um, the path tool can be used for uh, a lot of different things. You can use it for shading, but Jeremy's going to show some shading, so I'm not going to do that. Let me just get rid of those because we don't want those in there.
Okay.
You can use the path tool for changing like one of these books. You want the color to be different, you can just change one. If you want to add a little more detail to the table, you can do that. You can even replace shadows with the path tool. It is fantastic. One of the other things that we like to do with the path tool is we use it for water in various objects. So you can just kind of, oops, needs to be on normal for me to do this one. So I'll go with normal on this, and we'll just paint in the sink and filling it up with water, but it doesn't really look much like water. And then I like a different color for water in objects because I think it would be more better as like a tealish color. And then I will just drop the opacity. I don't change the blend modes on this one.
Hmm.
And then if you want, you can put some dishes in the sink. So you can put a plate in the sink, something small, obviously.
That's a big plate.
It is a very big plate. So you put a plate over here so you can see what it looks like.
Hmm.
And then you put a plate in the water and it's under the water. Make sure that path is over it. So you can see that now that plate's a little bit
Yep.
blue. So sometimes if you're putting a lot of objects together, what I just did there is I locked that path because I kept selecting the path instead of the object I wanted.
Yep.
So I don't want to move the water. I want it to stay put. So you can either click here and lock it, or you can just hit Control L and lock it. And then that way, no matter what I do, I'm not accidentally selecting that water anymore.
Hmm.
And then you can see, and if I think, oh, that path needs to be a little more blue because I want it to be clear that it's water, you just raise the opacity, or you can change the blend mode. For water, I don't usually change the blend mode unless it's in something specific or I've built the sink myself. But yeah, you can make different kinds of pies. You can fill barrels with water. You can change the color of the milk in the milk bucket. All kinds of fun stuff.
That is brilliant.
Yeah.
I
So the
like that.
path tool can even change the color of flowers on one of the, like sometimes the flowers come pre-made, and while I love them, they're not necessarily the I don't always want the yellow flowers.
Hmm.
As lovely as they are, sometimes I want a different color flower. So I can just go into the path tool, put it on hue. It's the magic one. And then I can choose pink Definitely not 5. Maybe too big. And we can just go in. No, it isn't. And make them pink. Now that's not working as well because pink is a soft color and yellow is harsh. But you can always fix that by just selecting those and changing the color settings. And making sure I'm making this right. I think I use color burn or a different one for this one. Again, if you're not sure, try the different blend modes. And that's my problem right there. I have it on 0 opacity. So
There we go.
that's the problem. So that was the problem. I had it on 0 opacity. So you got to, yeah, no one's perfect. So there, now they're pink.
There we go. Okay.
That should have worked. I was like, why isn't this working?
Yep.
So yeah, you can just change them by that. And that's basically how you change things with the path tool for color. You can do that with any object, anytime, anywhere, and you can even group and layer them so you can have like multiple flowers in a garden that are pink and purple, blue, green, whatever color you want them to be.
That's great. That's awesome. How did you discover that, Cheryl? Did you just decide, let me just try it one day and
Well, actually, kind of funny story. I really wanted a pink dragon, and I was contacting customer support. This is before we had the path to before we had like if you go into textures, there's the color option. Before we had this, um, I really wanted a pink dragon, and they had just introduced the blend modes. And I contacted support and said, "How do I get a pink dragon? I really like. How is there any way I can do this?" And like, "Oh, it's possible. You just have to play with the blend modes." And I kind of got like this pinkish, like fuchsia, but more purple dragon by playing with the blend modes. And it was all like obscured. I didn't really like it. And then I contacted them back again. I said, I could really. What is there any possibility that we'll get a texture with the color scheme or the ability to change the color choices, like solid colors, just like with the brush tool, but sure, just like the path tool, because I was like, oh, the path tool has that. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if I could use that. So then I just started coloring with the path tool like it's a crayon and put it on the blend modes. And I was like, oh, so the path tool didn't have the blend modes at that time. Let me correct that. Path modes didn't have blend mode time, but I put the dragon on luminosity and painted underneath the dragon's wings and made a pink dragon. And that was how we all learned to break the path tool. Now we never looked back, and we
That's
use it for
awesome.
everything.
Cheryl was the first one to do this, and now it is customary to use the path tool in these ways for a plethora of users. So,
Yeah.
and I think that's one of the unique things about the four of us is I feel like a lot of us have yes, we're high end users. There's plenty of other high end users, but I feel like the four of us have really broken the barrier multiple times in Inkarnate.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Cheryl
great.
made a modern car with the path tool. So there's one of our maps on our Patreon is a modern house that Cheryl made, and complete in the driveway of this modern house is a car. Now Inkarnate has no car stamp because it's a fantasy map making software. So she built one
using the path tool.
Using the path tool.
That is awesome. That's great.
Yeah. So it's I mean, you can change SBC. You can use the path tool. The path tool can do pretty much anything you want it to do. You just have to not want to limit yourself to what it can do. I use it. We all use it a lot now for shading because there's the blur mode. So you can put like shadows in. You can add extra textures. You can use the path tool to actually add light to things now because there is the overlay mode. But I think Jeremy's going to cover some of the shadow techniques. And I will leave it at that. I'm going to publish and clone this.
Jeremy, let's jump into it and show us what you're going to be doing.
Yeah, so I'm going to go through. I'm going to try to shadow a whole bunch of this, add lighting effects. We'll see how fast I can get through some of this. So first, we're going to kind of start with we'll call it the basics.
Okay.
So obviously, we have the light stamp. This corner one is going to be kind of where I start with. So we can go in here. Obviously, it's a light stamp, but that's a lie. We can turn it into a dark stamp too. So by turning the brightness all the way down, now we have shadows.
Okay.
Which is kind of what we're going for. So I'm gonna go in here. We can just add some of this into the house, and so you can kind of see right here where it's kind of going towards the window, and I don't particularly. If I make it bigger to go to this other window, it starts to overlap some.
Mm-hmm.
So this is when you start using like the transform tool and stuff like that. So I can extend out one way or the other to make it kind of extend along the wall where I want it to. So and I'm going to put normal on because overlay is a little orangey. That's a little, as you could tell, like that's a little too dark to be inside. So just dropping that opacity can really help that out.
Okay.
And so I'm just kind of quickly going to run this around the corners of the house to shadow the inside. Now, when we get over here, we kind of have this fireplace, so we start to run into where that's going to be causing a light in the room that we'll get to here in a little bit. I'm trying to do this pretty quickly. So this is kind of one of the more rudimentary kind of lighting styles. We're definitely going to go and show quite a few of the other ones. As they were kind of saying, the path tool is a fantastic way to add shadows just because of the way that you can layer it.
Okay.
So if I were to go through and shadow absolutely everything, you can see how the interior is still kind of pretty bright. Like you could go through, this would be like a really simple way is to just add like a big shadow kind of in the center of the room to darken a whole bunch of stuff.
Okay.
We'll just do that just for simplicity reason. The bed that Sheryl made, did you name it bed or did you just group it? So something else we could do is we can do duplicates. So once we start duplicating things, you can drop it below the other stamps. So we have a window right here, and I'm going into that. I'm just getting rid of your path tool. So we can go in here and we can drop this brightness down, and now we have a bed shadow. Obviously that's kind of bright, so simple enough, we just drop the opacity down. Now you could do this with everything in here. So like the couch, we could duplicate, make it a little bit bigger, extend it back, drop it down, brightness down, and again that's bright, drop the opacity. So you can start to create shadows using the same stamps by just duplicating it. And just bouncing off of that idea, so this is all battle map stuff, right? So we have a battle map couch duplicating to a battle map couch. But if we zoom out and we start looking at the surrounding area, so if we have the light, let's say the light's coming in from the top right and it's hitting these trees, we could grab the trees. So we could grab all of his trees and we could edit them. So we could edit them. We could do object layers. We could do the shadow layer and we could start to shift it. So we could start to shift these natural shadows using the stamps, but I don't want to do that. I don't think that that's going to look as good. So what we can do is we can go over to our regional style, and this is one of the things where you start mixing styles, and you have to be really careful when you mix, but this is one of the ways that I think is just really handy. So we have pine trees, so I can come in here and I can grab a pine tree. Now that looks kind of silly like that, but if you drop it below it and you drop the brightness down, that looks a little thin, so we could make it a little bit thicker. We can do that control copy trick. And you can start to create your shadows. Now on something like this, what I may do is extend it out as it goes over that cliff. Mm-hmm. So you could do something like that. You could also do something as easy as this might fall. It's kind of like a shadow, because something I may do is I would maybe even do like a reflection in the water where I'm trying to grab it. So kind of what the luminosity, you start playing with some of the blend modes, and overlay is a fantastic one. You could drop that opacity down and you start to get where you can make a reflection in the water. Typically I would do that if the tree on these cliffs, they're not poking out, but if it was like over the edge, I would put a reflection in the water underneath it. Okay. You could do the same thing with the regional a little bit, but I just wanted to touch base on how to do like a reflection in the water. So like that tree. Nope. So this tree is kind of over the water just a little bit. So we could do just a small reflection in the water, and depending on, you can use that edge mask that we were using earlier. And you could use that to blot out the tree that you don't want shown. So like we don't want the beach to have the tree on it. So you could just use that edge tool to cover up that sand. And now we just have that reflection in the water.
That is awesome. That's great.
So we'll go back to our pine tree and just kind of copy and paste to get these shadows around here. So now a bunch of our pine trees have shadows, even if it is our background texture is pretty like solid color, but if we want them to kind of shine through a bit more, we could easily like up their opacity where it's a little bit more significant. If we do our light, we're going to now add some lights inside of the building. So we'll go back to our light stamps. Orange is a really good one for fires. Typically, if you're going to do a light source off of a fire or lantern or anything like that, you want to layer them. So the first one I'll typically do is I'll make it pretty light, and then each step, so you make the next one a little bit bigger. And you don't even have to increase the opacity, because as you layer them up, it'll start to add it. So
okay.
Fireplace is pretty high up on the list, so we're gonna move all these up. So now it looks like we have a nice glow. We have a lantern in here. We could do the same thing with that. So we could start with a low opacity and then just kind of grow it bigger and bigger, and it starts to look like it's glowing.
That's awesome. That's great.
And then again, we kind of have the direction of where we want our light to be. So this is an orange light. I don't want it to be orange. So I'm going to drop that saturation down. Now we have white. So that's what I want. We could even make it brighter. So, you know, the sun's super bright through here. So we could have the light coming through these windows.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Casting a, you know, really nice shadow in here. And it, because the windows are over here, some people will add the same brightness to the windows over here. If you are going to add a light to the opposite side of the house, you have to make it dramatically lighter, if at all. Yep. I may not even add the light on that side of the building because I think that starts to take away from the source that we are trying to showcase.
Yep.
So now I'll go through here and kind of show the path tool. Now, if we were to spend, you know, hours doing this map, we would path tool and shadow absolutely everything on the map. I go a little too crazy where I'll go through and like the pie will have a shadow because pies have shadows, so it needs a shadow. But obviously we don't need to like go into
sure.
That level. I will typically spend twice as much time almost on shadows as I do building the rest of the map.
Shadows are very important to you.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's a healthy thing,
yeah.
But I like it. So here, and kind of what you saw is the path tool. So, and you could do this with the double stamp as well. I would probably use the double stamp. You can also do shadows underneath tables with the light stamps by making it a lower layer and just putting it underneath the table. You can totally do that. So I just kind of want to play with what she's done as well. So she has the sink here and we have the light kind of coming in. So something we could even do is we would add a shadow to the edge.
Oh my gosh.
Over here. So we start to add a shadow on because that window's right there, and this would have a little bit of a shadow on it.
Now that is some attention to detail.
Yeah, and it's those things that we tend to go crazy. Like this has a shadow on it. You can't almost see it, but it's like just to the edge. Like I would go through and I would use the default. I would drop my blur down significantly. And again, we have this window. And this is one of the harder things is if you just do an exterior, you can grab absolutely everything and just, you know, ship it this way. And it's not updating. Where are you, Shadow?
You need to change it to object. You're changing the layers.
Oh, yep.
There we go.
So if we shift that, so I would go through and do that, and now again the light's coming in, and even the knife on the table has a bit of a shadow on it.
You're gonna need to fix the layer shadows for the rest of the map.
Oh, did I do it to all of them or just that one?
It affects all layer shadows at the same time.
There we go. I just undid. So I'm just gonna do some rudimentary shadows in here. Just creating a bit of ambiance. So another thing with the path tool is whenever you're adding shadows and light, if the fireplace is coming out, and again, this is something that you don't have to do, but I definitely like, is you can add a bit of a highlight. So the fire's hitting the chair arm right here. So I can make it hit the chair arm. And just make that couch glow a little bit over there. again, kind of like the same way with the light, I may layer it up a few times. And I mean, you could even do it across the front of the cushion. Have a little soft glow kind of across the top of across to that. I typically even go into my chairs and couches, and I will typically add shadows in to where the arms are, as this is casting a shadow across the arm. And just make that a little bit darker. So, trying to get the outside. So if the building has a shadow as well, we could, a really quick way would be like this round one. We could put it on this side of the building to cast a shadow. Mm-hmm. Normally what we would typically do is use the path tool or use a giant like box stamp to make the shadow. I typically will path tool the entire outside of the building because that's going to give you the cleanest lines. But obviously if you're path tooling the entire outside of a building, that does, you are painting basically with that entire thing. So as we come around the front, I'll typically drop the shadows a little bit as the building isn't quite as shady on this side. Mm-hmm. So now we've created some shade. So as much as I like this, something I like to do, and I feel like this is something that a lot of people don't, is adding little bits of, so like with the river, that river, it's fantastic, but sunlight and stuff like that will typically hit it in different spots. So you could even just add a white light in just a few spots on the river, and you start getting some of the sun glare.
That makes sense.
And I think it really changes the way stuff looks. We could even go through and on the front side of all these trees, add a little bit of light, brightening up that one side to kind of show that one side is getting more light than the other. And then you could grab a black one. Typically, I would do this with multiple stamps on each tree. So you start to create a bunch. It really, if you want your map to have depth, if you want your stamps to have depth, what you need to do is lighting and shadowing. Mm-hmm. So the same trees all of a sudden have dramatically more depth. They have an extended shadow. One side's light is it's coming in on this side with shadows on that side. And I think personally it just brings a map to life. I kind of shaded the inside, and this is bugging me, so I'm gonna do this real quick, is along the outside. I just grabbed the circle one. I'm gonna transform it. And this is just, I call it like a dirty shadowing. We're just going to add it along this cliff face. And then we could even go in with our light one, and we could hit the cliff faces in a couple spots with lights as the light is coming in from this other direction.
So that makes those cliffs look even deeper.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's great.
And this is whenever I have a light source, and it's also it does way better on Reddit if you add God rays. We don't know why, but it's a rule. If you add God rays, they do better on Reddit. So I'll typically on a map like this, if I'm adding really extended lighting and shadows, I'll typically add some of these God rays because I feel like it helps people kind of like visually see, yeah, the light's coming in from this direction.
Yeah.
So there's some like rudimentary, and again, like if I were to I'd spend another like 4.5, 5 hours adding a shadow to just absolutely everything. Because I'm a sadist and I like my shadows.
No, but you're right. I mean, adding the light and the shadows really. I mean, on top of what Jared and Becca were doing with the cliffs and with the water and all of that, this really even more makes everything come up off the screen and make it look more three dimensional. So, yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
I really think the viewers are going to get a lot out of what you guys have been showing here. I mean, and I think honestly, Cheryl, with using the path tool to do the coloring, I think they're going to be blown away by that.
So I'm just adding a couple filters just because if you don't add filters, it's not a real map. Okay. No, they really make maps just. I mean, let's look at this. Look, all right, that's off, that's on. It's night and day. And then if you ever add light, any kind of lighting or anything like that, adding this clarity thing will make the lights pop.
Yeah, I can see
way
that.
more. So if we just turn that on, I'm sharing like my deep secrets here, adding the clarity filter. Every single one of my maps has a clarity filter.
Everybody send money to Jeremy because he's giving up all the secrets here.
Yeah, exactly.
Patreon.com/BBS Productions.
So yeah, this is just a few things, and like I'm gonna say this: any kind of map that you're making, you need to understand like how fast do you need it? Do you need a battle map to show your players the representation, or are you trying to make a piece of art that could be sitting in a museum? If you want it to be sitting in a museum, you will add shadows for the 5-6 hours. I don't want people to watch this and think that shadows and lighting are gonna make them. It makes the map dramatically better, but it also takes a certain amount of time. So any DN needs to weigh whenever they're making a map, what level of detail do I need and what level of that realism do I need? So always think about that, because again, I spend way too long on shadows, but again, I sell my maps and I want to give people the absolute best that I can.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to throw that out there. That way people, don't start spending 45 hours on a map that could only take 4.
Right. Now, I have a quick question for you, Jeremy. So I'm looking in the top left corner of this cabin, and the shadow from the tree is showing inside the cabin. So let me see if I know how to fix this, because and you guys are going to probably tell me I'm way off, but it just seems to me you can either manipulate the shadow, or if it's still there, could you use the clipping mask to erase that part of the shadow?
Yeah, you could.
There you go.
What you saw I just did is, as you said that, I dropped it down to the furthest layer. So what happened? So if this is on layer 1, I'll show you kind of what'll happen if what would end up happening is, that's a bit big. Might not be able to fix
the interiors on background.
Yeah, the interiors on background. So we might not be able to fix it like that.
You can, because you could paint the foreground the same as the wood paneling that's on the background.
I guess that's I could try to. Sometimes it does weird things with the lighting. But so whatever your edge layer's on, so if my edge is on 5, it'll grab absolutely everything. It grabs the brush work from anything. It grabs the brushwork from the brushing, but it'll cover up any stamp that is below that layer.
Okay.
So if we put the tree on -5 and we put the edge on -4, then we know that it's going to be underneath it. And then what Jared's saying is, if we I got to try to match this up real quick.
Check your favorites. It might be in favorites.
Nope, it's not in my favorites. Oh, there you go.
I think what you did there just looks great.
Yeah. Technically needed to be a little darker.
Yeah.
But
Get your
you would
path tool
match it
out.
up with that. But yeah, exactly what you were thinking. And that kind of gets into the, when you start planning out a map and stuff like that, you really got to think. So what she was saying is the way we did this is right now I'm on foreground. So you can see how it did it to the outside, but not the inside.
Okay.
And then if I flip it, it'll do it to the inside, but not the outside. So I just kind of wanted to explain that since we kind of showed it. So there's the mask tool, which you can add. Typically, it's used in world maps where you add land that you make your map on, and that's the land, and the rest is the ocean. But on a battle map, what you'll typically see us and other people do is the interior is one and the exterior is another. So if I were to go through and texture the outside of this building, I could just texture it like this, right, and go right around the building, and it did nothing to the inside. So it kind of keeps your interior safe when you're brushing the outside versus the inside.
Yeah, so it's really having an understanding of the layers and what's in the foreground and what's in the background. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very similar to Photoshop. All right, so want to thank you guys for showing everybody, I mean, all the fantastic things you can do in Inkarnate. I will say for myself, I had no idea you could do all that in Inkarnate. So I'm absolutely blown away. Do you guys have any shout outs to anybody or to a community or anything that you guys want to do very quickly?
Well, I think that considering that Inkarnate is the program that allows us to run our Patreon, Beg, Borrow, and Steal Productions couldn't run without Inkarnate, and the community that Inkarnate has, the devs are fantastic. Ingmar is just all of our favorite person. He owns and runs Inkarnate. All the devs, the artists are brilliant, and the way that they interact with the community on such a regular basis is just fantastic. So I think we all want to just go Inkarnate, really good. It helps us do what we do. So that's my shout out.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks,
You
Jared.
stole my shout out, Jared.
I'm sorry.
Anybody else? Any other shout outs to anyone?
I
Go ahead, Jeremy or Cheryl.
I was gonna say, I mean, for me, it would be just my table, like my players that I've been playing with for 20 years. Had they not given me the confidence to showcase and start sharing my art, I'd still be making my little dinky maps by myself and have never grown to where I'm at now. And they really gave me the confidence to start sharing it.
That's awesome. Cool. Go ahead, Cheryl.
My shout out would be to the Inkarnate team, the artists, the developers, Ingmar, the owner, for making a platform that is not only easy to use, but incredibly beautiful. It doesn't matter what style you're working in, whether it's, isometric, regional, world, battle maps, watercolor battle maps, they're all just so rich and beautiful, and there's a lot of options. I would also like to give a shout out to you for having us here, and
thank you.
to my Patreon cohorts who make the most amazing maps and challenge me daily.
Awesome. Thanks, Cheryl. We'll wrap up with you, Becca.
So aside from everything they've said, because they echo my sentiments, for me, it's really my family, my husband, and my child. My child is a brilliant artist, and having them be proud of my art is really special. And then my husband as well. Me going off on this random map making tangent that takes up some of my time and selling my maps, and he has been right there as one of my biggest supporters since day one, going, if this makes you happy, this is what you need to do. And I just really appreciate that.
Awesome. That's great. You're gonna make me cry.
I'm an emotional person. I'm almost there. It's fine. We can cry together.
That's okay. All right. Well, I want to thank you guys for being on the Digital Mapmakers Academy. I'm sure the viewers are going to get a ton out of what you guys showed here. So I'm going to be a respecter of your time and let you guys get on with your day, or Jared with your night, being in Australia.
My morning.
Yeah, your morning.
My
yeah,
morning.
That's true. Is it after midnight?
It's 12:35.
Oh my gosh.
AM.
Okay. All right. Well, we're definitely going to sign off so you can get to bed. And so I will see you guys later. We'll see you online. Hopefully we can have you back, on again sometime.
We'd love to.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to Sheryl and Jeremy for showing us how to recolor objects using the pathing tool, and then showing us how to use light and shadow to really make our maps pop and stand out. I also want to thank Jared and Becca for the episode last week. Folks, did I not tell you that BBS Productions, that their maps are works of art? They absolutely are, and I really enjoyed the time that I got to spend with them. If you enjoyed this episode, please go ahead and click subscribe, and don't forget to click the digi bell, so that way you'll be notified whenever a new episode is released. Thanks again for watching the Digital Mapmakers Academy. We'll see you next time.